All right, so it looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday, August 24th session of the OpenJS Foundation Standards Working Group meeting. We have a quiet group today, kind of getting some folks out for last minute vacations and dental appointments unexcitedly. So good luck with that, Joe. We start with our announcements. Any announcements from you all before I give you my deluge of, hey, remember this and that and the other? Upcoming meetings, something cool that happened? No? All right.
I mean, TC39 is next week, so that's an upcoming meeting.
That's true. And that's cool. Next week, TC39. Cool. I feel like we could make a hot or not list. Hot TC39 meeting. You know, not dentist appointments. There you go.
Pretty non-controversial.
Right. I don't think that's surprising at all. And, you know, hey, Jordan, do you want to tell people where they can go check out the agenda in case they're curious what the TC will be covering?
Absolutely. github.com/TC39/agendas always has up-to-date and historical agendas. And you can take a look at what will be talked about in the meeting, and 10 days before the meeting, all the things that are seeking advancement are supposed to be on there. So if you wait until then you don't have to check more than once generally.
Cool. All right. So check it out. It is extremely thorough. I often go back and look at stuff. I think it's great. You guys, amazing record keepers. So yeah, TC39 meeting next week. This week, just a couple of things that are foundation related. So this Thursday is the OpenJS World Programming Committee meeting. So for those who are interested in getting involved with the conference, we'd love to have you. There's like just a load of excitement around the possibility that this could be an in-person event. And we've got a lot of things that we are planning and would love to have you. Another FYI, ordinarily we would have a board meeting. It's the last Friday of the month, but due to vacations and absences, we're doing that asynchronously. So we won't have the public board meeting as we normally do because folks will be out, but FYI on that. And then another FYI, because this will happen before we see each other again here in the standards group. If you're interested in the book club, just like my second favorite group, because this is definitely my first favorite group, the book club will be meeting on September 7th. And we're talking about a couple of books that you all might really like. One is called How to Do Nothing, which isn't literally about how to do nothing, but more about like how to be like focused and intentional in the things that you are doing and kind of build awareness. And the other book is Braiding Sweetgrass, which Mike Champion read and will lead a discussion on, which is an ecological book, but it's also about sustainability and like systems and stuff like that. And so if you want to nerd out about books, book club is September 7th. So there's that. Oh, and then after this call, last but not least, after this meeting today is a working session of the CPC where we're going to be talking about what we have lovingly called the Nebraska projects, those critical projects which are important to our ecosystem, but supported by maybe one person. And that's a reference to the XKCD comic about the one dependency maintained by someone in Nebraska. So we're going to have a session on supporting the Nebraska projects after this. I think that's all the announcements. Robin is not here to tell me what I'm missing because she's on vacation. So sorry, Robin, if I've missed anything and you're watching this later or now. Cool. Anything else? Did that jog any memory for any of y'all about other things that are happening that we want to talk about announcement wise? I talked with Dom this morning at the W3C, and the TPAC planning is underway. And so they're really starting to think about TPAC sessions. I think our group might want to consider TPAC sessions. So we should put that on a future agenda. That's sort of another tangent thing. Okay. All right. So we jump to our agenda, which is light. Hemant, you've said you have to leave a little early, so I'd like to start with the ed site. There's just like really two things. After the last meeting, the action was that we were going to kick off a conversation with LF on getting started with the creative, because we'd had this like brainstorm about what are we going to call the site and that kind of thing. They sent to us a creative brief to fill out, and I'm going to pop it in our Zoom here, and I'm also going to pop it into the Word doc here. But the suggestion was, on their part, let's get started with sort of like the brand identity, and then kind of go from there with the site user experience. And so this creative brief is meant to more help us like hone the brand identity piece. I took a first stab at, just describing like the purpose and the background and like some of that sort of stuff. But I think we as a group probably want to refine like the perception section. So this is where they're asking us like what kinds of insight can we provide that might be like really useful. The ideas that we want to communicate in like in the brand, if it's a mascot or if it's a like mark or whatever, and terminology or things we'd like to reference or things we'd like to specifically avoid, that sort of that. And then of course, target audience and the stakeholders, which is something like Mike and we've all kind of like been trying to get as specific as we can about. So anyway, I figured it's worth our while to take a look at what's here for a few minutes and discuss and iterate a little bit so that we can send this back to them and get started with some examples. And just as a heads up, how they normally work is like we would send this to them. They would come up with a couple of directions based on what we say, and then we go through 2 or 3 passes of iterating on like directions that we like or providing feedback or whatever. So it's a pretty collaborative process. It's not like we're going to give them this one document and they're going to say, okay, well, here it is. So, yeah.
The document looks detailed, but I'm not sure if, as you said, it will just convey the message for them to come up with the desired output. We're requesting them for an PNG and an SVG, but also if we decide to have a landing page, it would be great if there are some designers who can give perspectives and ideas on what the landing page could be, given that they go through this document and understand the gist and what is required from this site. I would definitely vote for that. Mike has something to say.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if Yulia Startsev has kind of weighed in on this.
I don't believe so. I can flag it for her. Do you think she'd be interested in?
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, she's done a lot of, she's done quite a bit of contribution to, like the how we work stuff on PC39. And she also runs a occasional call on like A/B testing in language design and how to make languages accessible to newcomers. So I think she's got interests in kind of, how to, process mechanisms to bring people into, standards work, but also kind of how pedagogy combines with language design to make for learnable standards and systems.
It happens that I think tomorrow or Thursday, I'm gonna chat with her. I'd be happy to like show her the stuff and be like, so you want to help? Yeah, I think, but I think the how we work page is specifically was a source of inspiration for us in the sense that it was really clear and trying to kind of funnel people through. So that I feel like that should come in here somewhere. We should reference it as a thing we like, or a thing we want to kind of strive for. Where to put that? Maybe under like maybe under perception, just so it's like highlighted. So we like and take inspiration from the TC39 how we work. And I think the other like kind of connected to that too is the audience and the stakeholders that we're trying to satisfy. Bearing in mind that eventually, I mean, there's lots of different audiences that we could try and reach, and that I think eventually we want to have content for. My question is like, the two that are listed right now, mid to senior web developers who want to learn to get involved in standards development, and then developers currently participating in or following standards development who need more context. Are those the right categories, or is there a different group we want to try and hit with like V1 of this? Because I don't think we're saying absolute beginners.
Yep. Right, at least to start with, we can, if you look around, people who are interested or people who land on this page will basically be looking for understanding how the standards work or want to contribute, which I presume wouldn't be like absolute beginners, but there might be exceptions. But I hope someone who reaches this page would already have a certain amount of background knowledge, which they can leverage.
So that certain amount of background knowledge, do we assume that it's like, I know that JavaScript is a standardized language and that TC39 does that work? Or is it that I know JavaScript is a web standard and I don't have any other knowledge beyond that? Like I guess so it's the differentiation between like the system that created it, awareness of the system that created it.
Yeah, I think there's no harm in adding more details about what the process is, what the TC39 all about, how it all happens, and because few folks might be aware that there is such a committee, but they would not be aware on how it works or why it exists. And no harm in mentioning that. And if someone's already aware, they would probably just skim through or skip through those and get into what they're looking for. I feel having that landing page to give clarity on what this ed site is, and then having a page with like set of links or links that take to the post which we go and blog about would give more insights. And as you mentioned, like having tags would help to kind of filter out a specific tag that an individual is interested in.
Mike.
Yeah, I guess, as far as the, kind of how much experience do you have, I think kind of one thing that when you're learning about standards is like what's in scope and what's not, like what's the difference between JavaScript and jQuery, for example. And I recall that, I think it's maybe 10 or 15 years ago now, but there was an idea that if we held a TC39 meeting alongside, a W3 meeting that might lead to a bunch of kind of synergy, and we were in plenary and in walked some folk, and it turned out, it became apparent that they'd just been walking the halls because they were very interested, that, they were very concerned that the, web technologies were not particularly good for people with specific accessibility needs. And so, kind of there was this awkward conversation, like, kind of how can we help you, how can we help like people with those accessibility needs in TC39? And it wasn't immediately apparent, and they didn't have specific answers because, of course, they didn't know how the standards processes worked and what TC39 worked on versus what W3 worked on, and they didn't have I think ARIA was fairly nascent at that point, and so kind of that level of bringing interest groups like that up to speed, takes work. But it seems like kind of at least a little bit in scope, like, how, if you have this interest and you have this expertise in, like accessibility concerns, for example, what kind of research would you do and what would you need to understand so that you could figure out what levers are available for you to exert force on. So, I guess the answer is, to tie that back to the thing, a description of like, kind of, here's examples of how, if you have this concern, how might you identify the standards bodies and whether or not it's standards bodies or, for example, open source projects that are the best place to try to achieve the change that you want.
I like that, because I think that's both perhaps a target audience and then also kind of a stakeholder group at the same time, right? Like, because one of the things we want to do is make sure that the activities that we're, like the standardization activities that we're involved with are considering those concerns, right? And including them, if it's accessibility or security or internationalization or whatever. So I like the idea that like that should be a because I think you're right, like those groups are adjacent to this and maybe working on a set of needs that touch a lot of different standards, not just like the TC.
And these people, they had practical experience with screen readers and with alternative input methods and with the Windows mechanisms for like making buttons bigger and for slowing down the double click mechanism. And they were finding that, like, oh, now people are implementing their own double click based on set timeout with timeouts that work for, and so there was these, like there were these concerns that they clearly had, and they could describe their problem, but they couldn't, they didn't have transparency into, like I've got this problem, who do I describe it to? But I also think like that also bears on the magnetic idea. Maybe standards development can be fun. It's never actually been fun for me. But I worry that I mean, there's an element of like it's the friends you meet along the way, not necessarily the processes to get shut down. But I think if you go in thinking it's going to be fun, you're going to fall along the wayside very soon. And I think, you know, these people, they were coming in expecting they had a slog ahead of them to get the changes they wanted. And they were there because they wanted a particular change in mind. And so I think, looking for fun isn't maybe not a bad reason to get involved in standards, but I don't think it's, I think, a better reason to get in standards is because you have a problem in mind that you want to solve.
Yeah, I took out fun. I was like, okay, all right, maybe it's not fun, but yeah, I think you're right. It also belongs in a magnetic idea.
Absolutely. Like most of the questions would be like, how do they know which committee to present this idea? Most of the time we cross post saying that, hey, this is more like a W3 question, and folks in W3 were like, hey, you should probably reach out to TC39. So there is, it's a bit difficult, or there is no like straightforward line saying that, hey, these are the things that belong to this particular committee. So probably adding more clarity on that would definitely help a lot of folks.
Cool. So I tried to capture some of that in now just like the target audience and a little bit in the magnetic idea section about just like solving difficult problems on a higher impact level. And then I think also, yeah, that like to the point that you were just making, Hemant, about like just like cross-organizational collaboration does happen and is very valuable. But not fun. We're taking fun. Just kidding.
I have fun with it.
I have fun with y'all.
Unless relative.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Jordan, that's because you're a lot more Zen than I am.
I don't think I don't get that compliment often, so thank you.
The Zen of LJ Harb. Great. Okay. Anything else we want to like kind of add to this brief? I mean, I think to everyone's point, where maybe you're not necessarily giving them enough to go off of from like a design direction standpoint. I did bring that we liked the wisteria idea and the whist and that kind of thing. That like that we responded, but we just were not so passionate about any specific direction. The wisteria piece. I think we also kind of liked libraries as a concept. I don't know if there was anything else. Under stakeholders, I put obviously our community, and then the W3C and TC39 communities that we're active in. There's probably list our other communities too. Unicode.
That's right.
Okay. If well, so why don't we take the rest of the week if you think of stuff, like pop it in there, and then if by Friday I'll turn around and send this back to creative, and then I think from there they'll probably suggest some early sketches, or either that or they'll schedule a call with us, which I'll just invite them to this meeting for ease's sake.
That sounds way better.
Okay, cool. So that's the brief part of this. The other part, and Hemant has to go, yeah, sorry. Yeah. All right, thanks, see ya. So the other thing that I worked on in the interim of our last meeting was getting Hemant's template going, and I pulled that and I started adding some content to it. I haven't committed anything yet, but one of the things we were talking about was kind of how to organize content, and whether to just like have a page of listed links, or to like make use of the like nested markdown files and tags and stuff like that. And I'll be honest, I think the group originally was like, let's do more of the do more of the latter, where it's a list of links. But the more that I played with this, the more I kind of liked the idea of like having each piece of content be a markdown file, and using tags. And so like here's just like, I added one from Alan, right? So using like how-to guides as a category, paper type, like it's a paper as a category. And this is kind of also referencing that link I sent y'all in Slack about that categorization thing. Let me go, where was I? The Django project. That's what it was. Here, let me copy that and pop it in chat here too. So anyway, I don't know, not that there's anything really here to see, but just showing you the fact that I think using the built-in sort of content management system is probably the way to go, actually, for long term. But and that's the link I just sent. It's the documentation.divio.com. I think, yeah, the system. Yeah, so, but this maybe is something more to discuss and get feedback on from maybe Yulia too. She might have a perspective on how to organize it, but yeah, I guess this is the question. Is there any deep, passionate feeling about how to organize this stuff, or are you okay with us just sort of like starting this and seeing where it goes?
Is there a plan to hire kind of a professional copy editor to organize this stuff? Or what is the, like, I guess there's people contributing content, and what's the plan for,
Yeah.
And I guess your question is, do we want to try to slot things into the right place early, or do we want to kind of gather content and then, impose some kind of structure on it?
Yeah, so on the copy editor question, or the copy or content person, that's definitely something we can do and consider. I don't think we're at the point right now where we're like, oh yes, let's go like hire that person today, because I don't think we're far enough along. But I think that's something that we can do and pursue. But I also think we'd always intended to let people like share through this site resources that are helpful, right? And so the site launches and somebody publishes something or finds something that's particularly useful and helps speak to a question that our audience has, then like we should ideally have a way for the community to be able to submit that and have it show up on the site. So then my thought was, if that's the case, then it'd be great to give those contributors some sense of structure for like, how to think about categorizing this so that it shows up where people might be looking for it. Like, and I just really loved in that framework the concept of a tutorial versus, a how-to guide versus a reference versus an explainer. And sometimes people are looking for one, but only finding another. I don't know. I found that very helpful. And so I thought, well, maybe we could apply that here.
Okay.
But it could also be too, like, maybe it's premature. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess the reason I bring it up is just if we're going to have that kind of, if one person is going to be in charge of the overarching structure, then spending a lot of time trying to put things in the right place might be premature. But if it's mostly going to be, hey, you're a contributor, why don't you figure out where your stuff best goes, then having that structure in place ahead of time would make that easier, right? But I do think the Django documentation that you found, seems like a great structure to me from what I can see of it, but I have a little practical experience in this.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience myself. It's actually something I would love to get the MDN team's feedback on, because that's another group that's got a lot of experience organizing content. And, I can actually see them potentially helping out a little bit with this, because they also on MDN maintain a lot of data about specs and that kind of stuff. So it'd be worth sort of getting their feedback too.
I've also been really impressed with the Rust docs people and their ability to kind of, maintain, kind of parallel systems of documentation with good, kind of linkages between them.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. So, I mean, I think to your other question about like, is one person gonna own this versus the community? And I think that the reality is there's probably gonna be like a little bit of both, where we're getting a lot of input from the community about what should be there and what information they want and what would be helpful. And here's like, again, like contributions of resources we think would be good on one hand. And then on the other hand, there's probably going to be like one or two people, maybe a copy person, maybe a community person who's just like making sure that, that it is actually quality content, that the links work, that's taking a vetting step to make sure that the content remains high quality.
In that case, it sounds like the low-hanging fruit is, get the structure in there so that somebody who wants to write a how-to has a place to put it, and somebody who wants to write a theory article has a place to put that too. And then, as if we have some kind of, post-commit actions or, like review actions that identify dead links, that'll give us some level of protection against, errors from, reorgs, so that somebody who does want to come in and reorganize documents can do so without with some level of without worrying about breaking tons of things and not knowing.
Yeah, that sounds good. I just like the idea of there being some like minimum viable structure to help people like see what we're trying to do, especially as we get started. And that structure is not so firm or so precious or so integral that it can't be changed by someone who really knows what they're doing. So what I can do or would do if this would be helpful is to kind of continue on the path of taking some of the content that's already been submitted to us and adding it up to the site, like maybe starting a branch for this, and we can go from there in terms of seeing if that structure holds up and makes sense to us and that kind of thing. But that's like that one little bit that I did was just like me playing around for a few minutes after our last meeting.
So that part was not controversial.
Is that okay, or would?
Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. So that I'll just press ahead on that then, and then share the branch in the standards working group Slack, and we can kind of dive on from there. Okay. So I think that's the site is really the biggest like current activity that we have. The next, I think, thing to brainstorm about, which I'll just make an issue for this and we can talk about it at our next meeting, which is just TPAC. Like, do we want to have a session during the developer days of TPAC around our projects, and maybe invite some of our projects to come engage with the W3C developer community? I think that would be cool. But and then there's also, I think, opportunities to get them involved with the resource site too. But I'll put that on our agenda for next time. But I guess this is another point. If there's any specific, any additional topics our group would like to cover or suggest at TPAC. Either from the projects or elsewhere. Nope. Okay, well, if you think of one, we'll cover it. We'll cover it next time. All right, I think that's all I got. Anything else? Any other things on your heart or mind today with relation to standards or not? Okie doke. Then I will call the meeting. Thanks so much, everyone, for